Just as my parents were sobbing over my missing grandmother, I kicked the door open carrying her nearly frozen body in my arms. The brutal truth of that winter abandonment and a $6.5 million inheritance secret will strip the masks off these heartless monsters. Revenge starts. They lose everything. Denver in December is not for the faint of heart. The biting winds from the Rockies sweep through the glass skyscrapers of the lower downtown district, carrying a dry, bone-chilling cold that forces everyone to seek refuge. My name is Leo Ashford. I am 29 years old, and I work as a structural engineer for one of the top design firms in the city. My life is built on the foundation of precision and logic. In the world of steel beams and reinforced concrete, a deviation of even a fraction of an inch can lead to a catastrophe. Perhaps that is why I have always believed that life should have a solid structure, a stable career trust placed in the right people, and a family bond that is unshakable. My studio apartment is modest, but it is a place of warmth. It serves as my sanctuary after long hours of calculating load distributions filled with the scent of fresh coffee and the orderly stacks of technical drawings on my desk. If anyone asked me what truly mattered, I would not speak of my accolades or my salary. I would speak of my grandmother, Hazel. She is 79 years old and is the only person who taught me that true strength does not lie in wealth, but in resilience and kindness. After my grandfather Silas passed away a year ago, I promised her she would never be alone. Leo, I am fine. A woman with her memories is never truly solitary. She would often say, her gentle smile masking the hollow ache of her loss. However, I knew the old house on the outskirts was too vast and silent for her. I eventually persuaded her to move in with my parents, Preston and Meredith, in Cherry Hills. Cherry Hills is the pinnacle of status in Colorado, a place of sprawling mansions, manicured lawns, and social gatherings where appearance is everything. To ensure Hazel received the best care, I sent $3,200 every single month. I am not a wealthy man, but I sacrificed my own comforts to ensure she had organic food, the best medical care, and a heated room. Living in Cherry Hills is incredibly expensive. Leo, Meredith would often complain over the phone in her dramatic, high-pitched tone. Your grandmother is becoming quite particular with her needs, and we have had to hire extra help. It is exhausting. Every time I heard those words, I felt a pang of guilt and sent more money. I trusted them. I believed in the sanctity of blood relations. That trust began to fracture during a surprise visit last month. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Meredith was preparing for a charity gala. As she adjusted her expensive silk dress, my eyes caught a glint on her finger. It was Hazel's old gold wedding ring, a simple heirloom from Silas that my grandmother never took off. "Mother, why are you wearing that ring?" I asked, my voice tight. Meredith glanced at her hand and shrugged with indifference. "Oh, this Hazel left it in a drawer. It has that vintage look which is very popular right now. It is just a piece of old costume jewelry, really. I'm sure she does not mind me borrowing it to complete my outfit." The coldness in her voice was jarring. To Hazel, that ring was a lifetime of devotion. To Meredith, it was merely a cheap accessory. I found Hazel sitting in a corner of the sunroom looking thinner than I remembered, her eyes clouded with a quiet sadness. When I asked if she was happy, she merely squeezed my hand and whispered that she did not want to be a burden. Tonight, the air in my apartment felt unusually heavy. I was sitting at my desk working late on the structural plans for a new bridge with my colleague Finn. The orange glow of my desk lamp provided a sense of security against the darkness outside. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. Usually, I would ignore it, but a sudden icy intuition gripped my chest. I answered, and a deep, strained voice came through. "Is this Leo Ashford? I'm sorry to call so late. I was out for a run near Echo Ridge when I found an elderly woman sitting alone on a bench. She is shivering violently and appears very confused. She gave me this number." My blood turned to ice. "What is she wearing?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "A beige sweater, and she is clutching a faded floral bag," the man replied. The warmth of my apartment vanished instantly. Echo Ridge was a desolate lookout point miles away from Cherry Hills exposed to the freezing mountain winds. It was not a place for an evening stroll. It was a place where things were left to be forgotten. I grabbed my keys, the technical drawings on my desk, forgotten as a terrifying realization settled in my soul. The perfect facade of my family was not just cracking, it was about to shatter completely. The stranger's voice on the other end of the line was like a serrated blade cutting through the silence of my apartment. I did not ask for his name, I only asked for her location. When he said Echo Ridge, my heart stopped for a full second. That area was not a park. It was a desolate overlook, a narrow stretch of asphalt perched on the edge of a cliff miles away from the nearest heated building. It was a place where people went to see the stars, not to survive a December blizzard. I grabbed my heavy coat and rushed to the parking garage. The drive from the city center toward the foothills was a descent into a white abyss. The snow fell in dense horizontal sheets, obscuring the road until the world became a featureless void of gray and white. Visibility was near zero. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, my engineering mind frantically calculating the time it would take for hypothermia to set in at 15 degrees Fahrenheit with a 30-mile-per-hour wind chill. Every minute I spent navigating the icy curves of the mountain road felt like an hour stolen from her life. When I finally reached the summit of Echo Ridge, the headlights of my car cut through the swirling snow to reveal a sight that will be burned into my memory forever. On a rusted metal bench huddled against the relentless wind sat Hazel. She looked like a withered leaf clinging to a branch in a winter storm. She was wearing only her beige sweater, her hands tucked into her sleeves, and her small, frail frame was shaking so violently that the bench seemed to vibrate with her. Beside her was the faded floral cloth bag, the only thing she had managed to take from the house. I leaped out of the car, the freezing air burning my lungs. "Grandma!" I screamed over the howling wind. She looked up, her eyes unfocused and clouded with frost. When she recognized me, a small choked sob escaped her blue-tinged lips. I scooped her up, she was so light, almost weightless, and carried her into the sanctuary of my car. I turned the heater to its maximum setting and wrapped her in the emergency blankets I kept in the trunk. I rubbed her hands with mine, trying to transfer my own warmth into her frozen skin. "They left me, Leo," she whispered, her voice a ghost of its former self. "They said I was an obstacle. They said the family could not move forward if I held on to the past. Do not speak, Grandma. Just breathe," I replied, my voice trembling with a mixture of terror and rising heat. As we drove back toward the city, Hazel began to regain a small measure of strength. She reached for the floral bag and clutched it to her chest with a sudden, fierce intensity. When we finally arrived at my apartment, I helped her onto the sofa and prepared a cup of hot tea with honey. As she sipped it, she looked at the bag and then back at me. Her eyes, usually so soft, were now sharp with a hidden resolve. "I am not as confused as they think I am, Leo," she said, her voice growing firmer. "Preston didn't just drive me there. Before we left the house, they cornered me in the kitchen. They had a document. They told me it was a health insurance form, but I saw the bold letters at the top. It was a durable power of attorney and a property transfer authorization. They wanted me to sign away everything, my pension, the house, and the memories of your grandfather." My breath caught in my throat. "Did you sign it?" "They forced my hand," she admitted, a tear finally escaping and rolling down her weathered cheek. "They held the pen for me. They thought I was too broken to fight back. But when they were not looking, I took the copy. I knew they would try to destroy the evidence." She reached into the floral bag, her fingers fumbling with the inner lining where the fabric had been meticulously torn and re-sewn. She pulled out a crumpled, official-looking document. It was exactly what she had described, a fraudulent transfer of all her assets to Preston and Meredith Ashford signed under duress. A wave of pure, unadulterated fury crashed over me. This was not just a case of two children being overwhelmed by an aging parent. This was a calculated, cold-blooded ambush. They had stripped her of her dignity, stolen her jewelry, and then attempted to liquidate her entire existence before dumping her in the freezing darkness like a bag of trash. They did not want her to rethink. They wanted her to disappear so their lies could become the only truth. I looked at the document in my hand, my eyes scanning the predatory language used to trap a defenseless woman. My parents had miscalculated one vital thing. They thought Hazel was alone. They forgot that she had raised me to be a builder, and I knew exactly how to tear down a structure that was built on a foundation of rot. "Rest now, Grandma," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "They think they have won because they have the money. They have no idea what is coming for them." I stood up and walked to my desk, the technical drawings for the city bridge still spread out under the lamp. I was no longer interested in building bridges for the public. I was going to build a cage for the monsters who called themselves my parents, and I would make sure the world watched as the bars slammed shut. I carried Hazel into my apartment as if she were made of fine porcelain. The cold had seeped deep into her bones, and although she was now wrapped in my thickest wool blankets, her eyes remained fixed on a point in the distance that I could not see. I did not call the police yet. I did not call my parents. To defeat a master of deception like Preston, I had to let him weave a web so tight that he would eventually choke on his own threads. I sat at my desk and opened the Cherry Hills Community social media group. With a heart of lead, I typed the post that would set the world on fire. "Urgent. My grandmother, Hazel Ashford, has gone missing from the residence of the Ashfords in Cherry Hills. She is 79 years old and fragile. If anyone has seen her, please contact me immediately." I attached the photo I'd taken of her in the sunroom, the one where she looked small and abandoned. The reaction was instantaneous. In the affluent circles of Cherry Hills, reputation is the only currency that matters. Within 30 minutes, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Then came the comments I was waiting for. Preston wrote, "We are absolutely devastated. We have been searching every street for hours. Please, if anyone has information, help us bring her home." Meredith followed with a series of crying emojis, adding, "Her mind has been failing her lately. We have done everything to keep her safe, but she must have wandered off in her confusion." I watched the screen, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. The neighbors, however, were not all convinced. Joyce, the woman from 3 houses down, commented, "I saw the car of Preston leaving the driveway very late last night. He seemed to be in a great hurry." Another neighbor, Floyd, added, "It is strange that you did not alert the neighborhood watch immediately. We were all awake." While they were busy managing the digital fallout, I took my engineering kit and drove back to Cherry Hills in the shadows of the night. I knew Preston kept his spare garage key hidden inside a fake rock by the side entrance. I slipped inside the garage, the air smelling of expensive leather and gasoline. His luxury SUV sat there, a silent witness to his crime. I am an engineer. I know that modern machines are incapable of lying. Truth always leaves a trace in the digital architecture of a vehicle. I connected my diagnostic tablet to the port beneath the steering column and bypassed the encrypted user interface. My fingers flew across the screen as I accessed the telematics gateway. I searched for the global positioning system breadcrumbs from the previous night. There it was. At 10:30 p.m., the vehicle left the Ashford estate. At 10:45 p.m., the engine idled at Echo Ridge. It remained there for exactly 45 minutes. My father had sat in the warmth of that climate-controlled cabin for nearly an hour, watching his own mother shiver on a frozen bench, waiting for the cold to break her will. He did not just drop her off. He stayed to ensure she felt the full weight of her isolation. I downloaded the encrypted data packets and synchronized them with the time-stamped recordings of the phone calls I had made to him. Justice was beginning to take shape in the shadows. Just as I was leaving, my phone rang. It was Preston. I answered, keeping my voice trembling and thick with feigned desperation. "Dad, have you found her? I am losing my mind." "Leo, you need to take that post down right now." Preston hissed, his voice stripped of its public warmth. "You are making us look like we are not in control. People are starting to ask questions that are none of their business. We will find her. She probably just stopped at a house of a friend and forgot the time." "A house of a friend at midnight in a blizzard, Dad?" I asked, my eyes fixed on the log on my tablet, which showed his car had not moved an inch while he claimed to be searching every street. "Do not use that tone with me," he barked. "Go home and wait for my call. We have everything under control." I hung up without another word. He was so arrogant that he believed his status could override the laws of physics and data. He did not realize that I was no longer the grandson who looked up to him. I was the engineer who was meticulously dismantling the faulty structure of his life piece by piece. The community meeting was in 2 days, and I had everything I needed to ensure that the Ashford name would never be spoken with respect in this city again. Summit Hall was a temple of suburban vanity. Crystal chandeliers flickered over rows of polished mahogany chairs occupied by the elite of Cherry Hills. The atmosphere was thick with a calculated heavy sympathy. At the front of the room, Preston stood behind a lectern, his posture a masterpiece of practiced grief. Meredith sat in the front row, her face partially obscured by a dark veil, her shoulders trembling with rhythmic silent sobs. "We are a family in mourning," Preston began, his voice projected with the precision of a stage actor. "My mother, Hazel, is the heartbeat of this community. Her disappearance has left a void in our home that no amount of wealth can fill. We ask for your prayers as we continue our tireless search." It was a flawless performance designed to garner pity and cement his status as the tragic, devoted son. The heavy oak doors at the back of the hall thudded open, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the silent room. I stepped into the light, my coat still dusted with the remnants of the mountain snow. Beside me, Hazel stood with a quiet, terrifying dignity. She was no longer the shivering woman I had found on a frozen bench. She was a matriarch reclaiming her throne. To her left stood Councilman Hayes, his presence adding the weight of official authority to our arrival. The silence that followed was absolute. Meredith's feigned sobbing stopped instantly. Preston's hands gripped the edges of the lectern so tightly his knuckles turned white. I walked down the center aisle, the rhythmic strike of my boots on the hardwood floor, the only sound in the hall. I did not ask for permission. I reached the front, disconnected Preston's laptop, and plugged in my own engineering tablet. "The search is over," I said, my voice amplified by the hall's surround sound system. "But the era of lies is just beginning to end." I did not offer an explanation. I simply pressed play. The audio recording from Hazel's bag filled the room. The sound of a howling wind was interrupted by Preston's sharp, impatient snarl. "Get out of the car, Mother. You are a drain on our resources. Stay here and think about who actually provides for you." Then came Meredith's voice, cold and mocking. "Don't worry, Hazel. Maybe the mountain air will help you remember where you put the property deeds." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. I tapped the screen again, and a digital map of the region appeared on the twin projectors. A red line traced the path of Preston's SUV from Cherry Hills to Echo Ridge. A time-stamped data log showed the vehicle idling at the lookout point for exactly 45 minutes. "Truth always leaves a digital footprint," I told the stunned crowd. My father did not just leave his mother in a blizzard. He sat in his heated car and watched her freeze, waiting for her spirit to break so he could steal her future. Preston's mask of grief shattered, revealing the raw, ugly greed beneath. He lunged toward the stage, his face contorted with rage. "You think this changes anything, Leo? You think these people care about a family dispute?" He turned to the crowd, his voice booming with desperate arrogance. "I am the only son, I am the legal heir to the Ashford legacy. That land in the valley, the property Silas spent 50 years acquiring. It belongs to me by right of blood. It is worth millions, and I am the only one who can manage it." Meredith stood up, her veil discarded, her eyes burning with a frantic, predatory light. "He is right. We are the Ashfords. You cannot take what is legally ours because of a few recordings." Hazel stepped forward, then moving past me to the edge of the stage. She looked down at her son with a pity that was more devastating than any insult. "Your father knew you better than you ever realized, Preston. she said, her voice calm and unwavering. He knew that one day your greed would outweigh your humanity. 20 years ago, he ensured that you would never touch the heart of this family. I turned the tablet toward the audience. My grandfather was a man of foresight. He did not leave the valley land in a traditional will that could be contested or coerced. He placed it into a biological smart trusta, dead man switch, designed to bypass anyone who did not hold his values. "What are you talking about?" Preston screamed, his voice cracking. "The trust is encrypted with a multi-factor biometric lock," I explained, my fingers hovering over the tablet. "It requires a specific DNA sequence and a series of engineering passcodes that Silas taught me when I was a child. He told me it was a game, a secret language between an old builder and his apprentice. In reality, it was a failsafe." I placed my thumb on the scanner. A low, rhythmic pulse emanated from the speakers as the system verified my identity. On the giant screens, the legal title for the $6.5 million parcel of land flickered. The words, "Estate of Silas Ashford," vanished, replaced by "Leo Ashford, Successor Trustee." "The switch has been flipped, Dad," I said. "You spent your life chasing a ghost you were never meant to catch." The collapse was total. The American dream Preston and Meredith had meticulously manufactured the mansion, the status, the jewelry was revealed as a hollow shell built on a foundation of rot. Neighbors who had whispered in sympathy moments ago now shouted in disgust. Councilman Hayes signaled to the officers waiting in the wings. Preston sank into a chair, his eyes vacant, the realization of his total loss finally sinking in. Meredith began to shriek a jagged, ugly sound that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with the terror of being ordinary. As they were led away, the chandeliers above seemed to shine with a cleaner, brighter light. The Ashford name was no longer a brand of status. It was a testament to the fact that while lies can build a house, only the truth can provide a home. The dust from the confrontation at Summit Hall did not settle immediately. Instead, it cleared the air for a new chapter to begin. Within weeks, the legal transfer of the Valley property was finalized. The land which Silas had protected for decades was sold to a sustainable ski resort development group for $6,500,000. As an engineer, I ensured the contract included strict clauses for environmental preservation. I was not just selling soil and trees. I was converting my grandfather's foresight into a force for good. With the capital from the sale, I did not buy a mansion in Cherry Hills or a fleet of luxury cars. Instead, I established the Silas Ashford Fund. The mission was simple, yet vital to provide a safety net for the elderly who had been marginalized by their own families or the system. We focused on covering heating costs during the brutal Colorado winters, providing legal aid to prevent elder abuse, and creating secure housing for those who had nowhere else to turn. I wanted to ensure that no other woman would ever have to sit on a frozen bench at Echo Ridge wondering why the world had turned its back on her. The transformation of our lives was profound. I moved Hazel into a spacious, sun-drenched apartment in a quiet district of Denver. It was a place of high ceilings, warm wooden floors, and a balcony that offered a clear view of the mountains she loved. I used my engineering background to design a small firm of my own specializing in sustainable urban structures. Every blueprint I created was a tribute to the precision and integrity Silas had instilled in me. The fate of Preston and Meredith was a stark contrast to our newfound peace. In the elite circles of Cherry Hills, reputation is everything, and theirs had been incinerated in a single night. The recording of their cruelty had gone viral, reaching every social club, charity board, and business associate they had ever known. They became pariahs in the very world they had sacrificed their souls to join. Without the influx of my monthly payments and with the legal fees mounting from the investigations into their attempted fraudulent property transfer, their American dream began to implode. They were forced to put the Cherry Hills mansion on the market at a significant loss just to settle their debts. The last I heard, they were living in a cramped rental on the far outskirts of the city, stripped of the status and jewelry they had once valued more than life itself. They had discovered too late that a house built on greed cannot withstand the storms of truth. One evening, as the winter sun began to dip behind the jagged peaks of the Rockies, I sat with Hazel by the large bay window of our new home. The apartment was filled with the soft golden light of the late afternoon. The familiar sound of the kettle whistling in the kitchen provided a soothing rhythm to our silence. I brought 2 mugs of hot tea to the table each, with a generous spoonful of local honey just the way she liked it. Hazel took the mug with her frail but steady hands, her eyes reflecting the orange glow of the sunset. She looked at peace. The gaunt, terrified expression she had worn at Echo Ridge was gone, replaced by a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from within. "Leo," she said softly, her voice clear and resonant. "You have built something far more important than a company or a fund. You have restored the honor of our name." "I only followed the plan Silas left behind, Grandma," I replied, squeezing her hand. "Money is like the steel you use in your buildings," she continued, looking out at the mountains. "It is a powerful material, but it has no value if the design is flawed. It only becomes a legacy when it is used to protect and to serve. You have used it to build a shelter for others, and for that your grandfather would be immensely proud." I looked at the technical drawings spread across my desk in the corner. They were no longer just calculations of load and stress. They were symbols of a future where integrity was the primary support beam. I realized then that my parents had never been wealthy, despite the silk dresses and the expensive cars. They were the poorest people I knew because they possessed nothing that could not be taken away by a court of law or a public scandal. True wealth was sitting here in the warmth of a quiet room, watching the woman who raised me breathe without fear. It was the knowledge that the Silas Ashford Fund was at that very moment providing a warm bed for someone who had lost hope. It was the understanding that my work as an engineer was now dedicated to the betterment of the community that had stood by us when the truth was revealed. As the stars began to pinprick the darkening sky, I felt a profound sense of closure. The structures of the past had fallen, but we had used the ruins to build something eternal. Trust had been broken, but it had been replaced by a loyalty that was forged in the fire of adversity. In the end, the most enduring legacy is not the land we own, or the money we accumulate, but the love and devotion we offer to those who paved the way for us. With Hazel by my side, I knew that the foundation of our new life was unbreakable. How do you feel about this story? Please share your thoughts below. Your feedback helps me improve future content. If you found this journey meaningful, follow for more inspiring and high-quality stories every day. Your support keeps me going. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.